quiet corner of a vast wildlife sanctuary, under a soft gray sky, a moment of amazing tenderness unfolds. An elderly man, his body settled into the worn fabric of a wheelchair, gazes forward. His hands, marked by time, rest on his lap. Before him stands not a person, but a powerful force of nature, a magnificent male lion, its golden mane a wild halo around a face of majestic power. There is no cage between them, only a few feet of grassy earth. And on that sacred ground, the king of the savannah performs an act of surprising gentleness. A massive paw, tipped with claws capable of tearing steel, is lifted with delicate care and placed upon the man's knee. The air is still, filled with an emotion that words cannot capture. It is a scene that defies logic, a silent talk between two beings from different worlds. Who is this man? And what is his connection to this formidable predator? This is not a chance meeting or a trained trick. This is the culmination of a story that has been hidden for 3 decades. A story of a single heroic choice, a profound sacrifice, and a bond that memory refused to let fade. To understand the weight of that gentle paw, to feel the history held within that quiet gaze, we must journey back in time. Back 30 years to a fateful day that would shatter one life, save another, and forge a connection that time itself could not break. 30 years ago, Thomas Raines was a different man. Young, full of life, with legs strong enough to carry him for miles across the sun-baked African plains. He lived and breathed the wilderness. He was not just a ranger, he was a protector. His face was tanned by the sun, his eyes sharp, used to spotting the flick of an ear in the tall grass or the distant shimmer of a herd on the move. His life was a rhythm of patrols, of tracking, of listening to the ancient pulse of the land. He felt a deep connection to the creatures he protected, a silent understanding that this was his life's purpose. One very hot afternoon, while on a routine patrol near a series of rocky outcrops, a sound caught his ears. It was faint, a high-pitched cry of distress that was nearly swallowed by the wind. He followed the sound to the edge of a narrow, deep ravine. There, huddled on a precarious ledge just below the rim, was a tiny lion cub. It could not have been more than a few weeks old. It was alone, shivering, its cries weak and desperate. There was no sign of its mother. Thomas knew the brutal facts of the wild. A lone lion cub was a death sentence, an easy meal for hyenas or a victim of starvation. His heart ached for the small creature. Without a second thought, his training took over. He assessed the unstable cliff edge, the crumbling sandstone, a clear danger. But leaving the lion cub was not an option. He lay flat on his stomach, inching his body forward, his arms stretched out. The cub, seeing him, cried out again, a mix of fear and a desperate plea. "Easy there, little one," Thomas whispered, his fingers just managing to brush against its soft fur. He had it. He began to pull the small, warm body towards him. But in that same instant, the earth gave a sickening groan. The fragile rock he was lying on fractured. In a split second of pure instinct, Thomas used the last of a stable grip on the ground to fling the lion cub away from the edge, sending it tumbling safely onto the solid ground several feet away. For him, there was no escape. The world dissolved into a chaotic roar of falling rock and dirt. The ground vanished from beneath him, and he fell into the darkness of the ravine. The last thing he remembered was an unbearable crushing weight on his legs, a pain so absolute it stole his breath, and then silence. He was found hours later by another patrol, barely conscious, his body broken. The lion cub was safe, but Thomas Raines would never walk again. His career was over. His life in the wild was finished. He returned home, quietly moving into a world defined by 4 walls and the silent companionship of a wheelchair. His heroic act as a secret sacrifice known only to a few. For 30 years the story went silent. 30 years is a long time. It is long enough for vibrant memories to soften into pale watercolors, for a life of adventure to feel like a story someone else lived. For Thomas Raines, now 68, Those 3 decades had passed in a quiet, unassuming rhythm. His world was his small house, his garden, and the memories he rarely spoke of. The African sun was a distant ghost, the roar of a lion a sound he only heard in his dreams. He had made peace with his new life, but a part of him remained on that dusty cliffside, forever connected to the choice he made. Then, one Tuesday morning, the phone rang. It was a name he had not heard in years, a former colleague. His voice older but instantly recognizable. After a few minutes of pleasantries, the man's tone grew serious. "Thomas," he said, "I am calling for a strange reason." "You remember that day?" The rock slide. Thomas's heart gave a jolt. "Of course, the lion cub," the voice on the phone continued. "The one you saved. It survived, Thomas. We took it in. It is still here at the sanctuary." A pause. "And he is magnificent. But there is something else. He has this unusual behavior. He has always been incredibly calm around the rangers, never aggressive. It has baffled everyone for years. We had a theory, and I had to call you." The news struck Thomas like a bolt of lightning, alive after all this time. A torrent of emotions washed over him. Shock, joy, and a deep trembling hope, but it was tangled with a profound fear. What if the lion did not remember? He would just be a strange man in a metal chair. The hope was too fragile, too precious to risk being shattered. He found himself researching late into the night. Can an animal truly remember a single act of kindness from its infancy across a chasm of 30 years? The scientific community offers theories but few certainties. They speak of associative memory, where a scent or a sound can trigger a powerful recollection. Studies have shown elephants recognizing keepers after 20 years, and even cats responding to the voices of owners long since passed. But a lion, a creature of instinct and raw power? Could an emotional imprint formed in a moment of terror and rescue truly last a lifetime? The question haunted him. His friend's description of the lion's unexplained calmness was a piece of a puzzle he felt compelled to solve. It was a faint echo from the past, a whisper that suggested his sacrifice had not been forgotten. After a week of internal debate, he made his decision. He had to know. He had to see for himself. And so, with a heart full of nervousness and a lifetime of unspoken questions, Thomas Raines arranged the trip. He was going back for one final visit into the presence of the life he saved, and the life that cost him everything. The sanctuary was vast, a sprawling expanse of protected land that tried to copy the freedom of the wild. As Thomas was wheeled along a dirt path, he saw the familiar scattered acacia trees, their thorny branches stark against the overcast sky. A tall wire fence marked the perimeter, a necessary boundary between two worlds. The air was different here. It smelled of dry earth and wild things, a scent that pulled at a deep sleeping part of his soul. He was escorted by 2 young rangers, a man and a woman, their faces a mixture of professional calm and clear curiosity. They knew his story, and the tension was a quiet third passenger on their journey. They stopped at the edge of a huge grassy enclosure. "He is in here," the male ranger said softly. "We will give him some space." Thomas nodded, his throat too dry to speak. He scanned the enclosure, his eyes searching, and then he saw him emerging from a group of trees. The lion appeared. He was larger than Thomas could have ever imagined. His body was a ripple of muscle, his movements slow and deliberate, full of a quiet confidence that showed his status as king. His magnificent golden mane framed his face, and he paused, surveying his territory with intelligent amber eyes. First his gaze swept over the rangers, lingering for a moment. Then his eyes moved, and they found Thomas. They locked. In that instant, the world seemed to fall away. There was no fence, no wheelchair, number 30 years of silence. There was only the man and the lion, the lion began to walk towards them. It was not a charge. It was a slow, purposeful approach. The female ranger instinctively took a half step back, her hand hovering near her side. The male ranger stood his ground, but Thomas could see the rigid line of his shoulders. Every instinct in their bodies was screaming danger. An apex predator was closing in, but Thomas felt no fear. He only watched, his heart pounding a deafening rhythm against his ribs. The lion stopped just a few feet from his wheelchair. It stood there for a long moment, its gaze never leaving Thomas's face, as if it were searching through the fog of years, through the lines on the man's face for a memory. Then, with a grace that seemed impossible for such a powerful creature, it did something that brought the entire world to a standstill. It gently, slowly lifted its massive right paw. The two young rangers held their breath. The paw, a tool of immense power, moved through the air with the delicacy of a falling leaf. It came to rest softly, weightlessly on Thomas's knee. The claws remained hidden. A profound silence enveloped them, broken only by a single sharp gasp from the female ranger. And then the lion did something more. It lowered its great head, bowing before the man in the wheelchair in a gesture of unmistakable respect, of recognition, of honor. Tears streamed freely down Thomas's weathered cheeks. He raised a trembling hand, scarred and aged, and laid it upon the lion's thick mane. The fur was coarse and warm beneath his touch. A lifetime of unspoken grief and quiet acceptance found its release.